Hi, and welcome back to Psych with Mr. Snyder, and today we are finishing up Chapter 14 by discussing the humanistic approach to personality and psychology and the sociocultural approach. Here are your learning targets for today. We will identify what the focus of humanistic psychology is and discuss Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is pretty important. We'll summarize Carl Rogers' theories on humanism. We'll describe how we evaluate the humanistic approach, and we will then summarize the sociocultural approach and how it views personality development. So let's begin. Humanistic psychology has kind of been called the third force in psychology, and that's different from the behaviorism and psychoanalysis that dominated the early 20th century of psychology. But while behaviorists and psychoanalysts believe that psychology should not attempt to study self-awareness, humanists begin with the assumption that self-awareness is what we should study because that is the common core of humanity. Abraham Maslow was a very early humanist, and he believed that humans are separated from lower animals by the drive to reach their potential. And each person is unique, and they must follow their own path to their what is called self-actualization, or the desire for someone's self-fulfillment, or whatever your hopes and dreams are. If you get there, that is self-actualization. And following a personal path involves taking risks, and people who take the risks are more likely to enjoy and reach their self-actualization. So here's the pyramid that we call Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you can see here, this is why I always ask if you're comfortable. Do you have food? Did you eat this morning? Do you have water? Are you cold? Do you feel safe in here? Because if a person's physiological needs and safety needs are not met, they cannot meet anything above those needs on the pyramid either. So if you haven't eaten or drank any water for the day, that's all you're going to be thinking about and all you're going to be trying to meet. I can't expect you to do psychology or math or anything else. Those are your basic needs. And once your basic needs are met, you can focus on your psychological needs, which are the needs of belongingness and love and esteem. And then finally, once all of those needs are met, you can work on your self-fulfillment needs, which is trying to reach self-actualization. And this is the pyramid known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I would draw it. Carl Rogers is another early humanist, and he believed that people are basically good, and they start out mentally healthy. People, when they're born, humans are good, and they start out mentally healthy. But he also said that people are not affected by the outside experiences. To some extent, humans are architects of their own personalities. People have choice, free will. People shape their personalities through actions. And this theory is called, because it revolves around the self, it is called self theory. And the goal, or the thing that we're trying to make good, is our self-concept, which is the view of oneself as an individual separate from other human beings. And the self is concerned with recognizing personal values and establishing one's relationships to other people. And so self-concepts are made up of a couple of things, and it's our impression of ourselves and our evaluations of how adequate we are in society. And Rogers says the key to happiness is something called congruence, or how consistent is your self-concept, your inward self-concept, how consistent is that to your experience? So if you like to think of yourself as a friendly person, but you get upset a lot at little things and you show aggression, then that's not consistent in your experience, and you're not going to be happy. As far as self-esteem and positive regard, self-esteem is how you feel about yourself, but at first it reflects the esteem to which others hold us. But a humanist would disagree with that because we cannot fully live up to the wishes of others and also remain true to our self-concept. But a humanist would say that the expression of yourself does not always have to lead to conflict. We only conflict with others when we're frustrated in our efforts to develop our potential. And Rogers uses these theories to develop a therapy called person-centered therapy. And person-centered therapy actually requires getting in touch with our genuine feelings and acting on them. And if you do that, you will be on the path to self-actualization. And this is just a little thing from your book, but I wanted to put it here because it's from The Sims. The Sims is a popular game, and the creators actually focus the game's needs on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Your Sims won't do anything if they're not fed, or if they don't have any water, or if they're not clean. You know, they need those basic needs before they can move on to the psychological needs and the self-fulfillment needs. So how would we evaluate the humanistic approach? Humanistic psychologists would say that our conscious experience is what matters. So behaviorists are the outside influences, social learning theorists are observation. Humanistic would say conscious experience is the essential part of human life. And this is not just us living, it's our own consciousness of traveling through space and time. And this is what separates us from any other animal. Humanistic theories are popular nowadays, and they're more relevant because they do grant consciousness a key role, and they stress human freedom and free will. While behaviorists and psychoanalysis say that this freedom is an illusion, it is the key to the humanistic experience. But critics of the humanistic approach would say that, okay, that's all well and good, but it doesn't predict any traits, abilities, or interests that people are going to develop, like trait theory would. So now let's move on to our last learning target, the sociocultural approach. And sociocultural, you have to think about what that term means, because it focuses on the roles that ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, and culture play in shaping personality, behavior, and mental processes. So according to the socioculturalists, both family and environmental influences are the key factors in personality development. In sociocultural psychology, they look at differences between individualism and collectivism. Individualism, and countries that believe are individualist countries, are the United States and most European countries, they give priority to a person's personal identities and goals. And this is mostly because of our economic system of capitalism. Capitalism entitles people to huge fortunes if they have the means to make those huge fortunes, whereas collectivists in other parts of the world give priorities to the goals of the group. And the contrast between these two is a reliable measure of the personality differences between individuals from these two types of cultures. And so that is one question they'll ask. Are people from an individualist culture, or are they from a collectivist culture? The United States is individualist. The social and cultural factors also affect the self-concept and self-esteem of the individual. And this is because Rogers says that self-concepts tend to reflect how others might see us. But members of those groups that have been discriminated against, such as minorities, may have lower self-images because others tend to see them as lower or less. Women are a prime example of this because many women are unhappy with their looks, especially they found white women, because the media portrayals of women similar to them are unrealistic. And so this affects a woman's self-concept because the way they portray themselves to the world is not reflective, and it's not the same as the media's unattainable female image that they portray onto the world. And finally, we have the process of acculturation in sociocultural psychology. And personalities are influenced by a person's cultural setting. And a Korean American student will be influenced at Korean at home and American at school. And acculturation is the process of adapting to that new or different culture. Now, we all start at different places. Some person might move here from Korea and not know a word of English. Others might at least know a little bit about the culture, and will start at different points in this process. Some immigrants will become completely absorbed into the culture in which they move. Others may completely abandon or maintain separation of that culture because they're more comfortable with their own customs and language. But research tends to suggest that people who are bicultural have the highest self-esteem out of everyone. And so your learning target review, we identified what humanistic psychology was, and we discussed Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We talked about Carl Rogers and his theories of self-concept. We described how the psychologists view and evaluate the humanistic approach and also the sociocultural approach. So fill out your learning targets, and I will see you back in class. Have a good night. Goodbye.